They looked at us like we were trying to fax them a TikTok. Dinosaurs, stuck in the past, refusing to embrace progress. For years, every time we complained about touchscreens, manufacturers told us we just need to adapt. When we asked where the spare wheel went, they handed us a can of tyre foam and a phone number for road assistance. When we questioned why a €50,000 car no longer had a dipstick, they smiled and said the computer would handle it. Well, something extraordinary is happening in 2026. The manufacturers are backtracking, not because they suddenly developed common sense, but because regulators forced their hand. Sales collapsed and customers revolted. Volkswagen's design chief admitted publicly that removing buttons was a mistake. BMW quietly put spare wheels back in the X3, and Euro NCAP announced that from January 2026, cars without physical controls for basic functions will be penalized in safety ratings. This is your victory. Every complaint you posted, every forum rant, every refusal to buy their screen-obsessed machines, it worked. Today we're counting down 11 features that manufacturers stripped away, and what's finally changing. Some are already back, others are returning soon, and a few, well, we're still fighting for those. If you've been watching this channel, you know we've been documenting this madness for years, and if you're as relieved as I am that sanity is finally returning to car interiors, hit that subscribe button, because we're going to keep holding manufacturers accountable until every one of these features is restored. Let's start with the biggest reversal of all. Number 11. Physical buttons for climate and audio controls. This one isn't just coming back, it's being mandated. From January 2026, Euro NCAP will penalize any car that doesn't have physical controls for 5 critical functions: indicators, hazard lights, horn, windscreen wipers, and the emergency call system. Manufacturers who bury these in touchscreen menus will lose points and safety ratings, and since roughly 90% of European buyers check those ratings before purchasing, this isn't optional anymore. But here's what's really damning. A 2022 study by Swedish car magazine Bilare tested 12 vehicles to see how long basic tasks took while driving at 110 kilometers per hour. 4 simple tasks: turn on the heated seat, increase temperature by 2 degrees, start the defroster, and tune the radio to a specific station. The 2005 Volvo V70 with physical buttons? 10 seconds. The driver traveled 306 kilometers. The MG Marvel R with its massive touchscreen? 44.9 seconds. The driver traveled 1,372 meters, more than a kilometer with their eyes bouncing between the road and a screen. The BMW iX needed 30 seconds. The Volkswagen ID3 needed 25.7 seconds. These are premium vehicles costing 50,000 to 100,000 euros, and a 17-year-old Volvo destroyed them in usability testing. Volkswagen has already started reversing course. Design chief Andreas Minter admitted to Autocar, "We will never, ever make this mistake anymore." The new ID Polo, revealed in late 2025, has physical buttons for climate and audio. The refreshed Golf and Tiguan have real switches again. Hyundai has restored physical controls to the Tucson, Palisade, and Santa Cruz after their own focus group showed, surprise, that people hate touchscreens for basic functions. Porsche is bringing back buttons for the Cayenne. Even Ferrari admitted their touch-sensitive steering wheel controls weren't 100% perfect. The touchscreen cult is retreating, and Euro NCAP just locked the door behind them. Number 10. The spare wheel. For over a decade, manufacturers convinced themselves that run-flat tires and mobility kits were acceptable replacements for the simple, reliable spare wheel. They saved weight, they freed up boot space, they looked modern on specification sheets. What they didn't tell you was that run-flat tires cost 250 to 350 euros each, compared to 80 euros to 120 euros for standard tires. That they ride harshly, that they're frequently unavailable in rural areas, that the mobility foam kits permanently destroy your tire, meaning you're calling for recovery anyway if the puncture is too large. BMW was the worst offender. For years, their entire lineup shipped without spare wheels. The reality was cost-cutting and the profit margin on overpriced run-flats. But check the specification sheet for the 2025 BMW X3. For the first time in years, you can actually option a spare wheel. The G45 X3 offers a space-saver spare for around £200. Still an extra cost, but the fact that it's available at all represents a significant reversal. The G45 also comes with non-run-flat tires as standard on many trims, and forum users report the ride quality has improved noticeably. BMW made similar changes to the G65 series. Why the change? Because customers screamed. Because one BMW owner documented a €1,400 ordeal on Bimmerfest after a flat tire on run flats left him stranded for hours waiting for a specific replacement. Because the second-hand market punished cars without spares, you can still option the BMW mobility kit instead of the spare at no extra cost. But the fact that a spare wheel is now the default tells you everything about how badly they miscalculated. The fight isn't over. Most manufacturers still ship without spares, but BMW's reversal proves it's possible when enough customers refuse to accept the alternative. Number 9. Dedicated climate control panels with actual knobs. This one rides on the coattails of the physical button rebellion, but it deserves its own mention because climate controls were the canary in the coal mine. Remember when every car had 3 rotary knobs? Temperature, fan speed, direction. You could adjust them without looking. Your passenger could change their side without interrupting your driving. The system worked for 50 years. Then someone decided that a flat touchscreen panel looked more premium. Suddenly, changing the fan speed required 2 taps and a swipe. Adjusting temperature meant taking your eyes off the road. Dual zone climate became a menu buried 3 levels deep. The backlash was immediate and sustained, and manufacturers are finally listening. The 2026 Hyundai Palisade, despite having 2 screens dominating the dashboard, shows physical buttons and rotary knobs for climate in the latest reveals. The Tucson has returned to physical climate and audio controls. The Kona has some of the best physical controls in its class, but be careful when shopping. Some Hyundai models like the recent Santa Fe still use haptic touch panels for climate, which are barely better than touchscreens. Check the specific trim before assuming buttons are back. Volkswagen is clearer about the reversal. The new ID Polo, revealed in late 2025, has physical piano key buttons for climate and audio. Backlit, tactile, and impossible to accidentally activate. The refreshed Golf and Tiguan have real switches again. Mazda never abandoned this fight. The CX-30 and CX-5 still have proper climate control knobs, and Mazda's sales success proves that customers notice. Dacia builds climate controls with actual switches across their entire range, and they are now selling more cars than ever. The lesson is simple. Climate controls aren't infotainment. They're essential vehicle functions that drivers adjust constantly. Burying them in software was never about progress. It was about cost-cutting disguised as innovation. Number 8. The oil dipstick. This one makes me angry because it represents everything wrong with modern automotive engineering. A component that costs perhaps €2 to manufacture has worked flawlessly for a century and provides instant, reliable feedback, replaced by a sensor that costs €250 and sits in boiling oil waiting to fail. You're trusting a €2 sensor to tell you if your €20,000 engine is about to seize. BMW eliminated dipsticks around 2006. Their justification? Market research suggested customers rarely use them. Mercedes followed. Audi joined the club. The problem started immediately. Forum posts from BMW owners document electronic oil level sensors giving widely inaccurate readings. One week the car says add a quart. The next week it says overfilled, despite nothing changing. Sensors fail in the hot, contaminated environment of the oil pan, which everyone with basic engineering knowledge could have predicted. Worse, BMW's own documentation states their engines consume up to 1 quart of oil per 800 to 900 miles as normal. Combined with their recommended 15,000-mile oil change intervals, this means an engine holding 7.5 quarts could theoretically need 16 quarts between services. The math doesn't work, and without a dipstick, owners have no way to verify reality against what the computer claims. Here's the partial victory. BMW's V8 engines in the 7 Series and 8 Series actually retained physical dipsticks. They just buried them deep in the engine bay near the airbox and told owners to use the screen instead. The dipstick was there the entire time. BMW simply pretended it wasn't. Now, at least, they're acknowledging its existence in service documentation. The 6-cylinder engines, the N54, N55, and B58 that power most of the range, genuinely have no dipstick. You're entirely dependent on a sensor sitting in hot, contaminated oil. The battle continues, but the existence of dipsticks in high-end BMW proves they know the electronic-only option was a mistake. Number 7. Naturally aspirated engines. The turbocharged takeover was supposed to deliver better fuel economy with equivalent power. In laboratory conditions, it worked. In real-world driving, the story was different. Turbocharged engines suffer from turbo lag. They require premium fuel in many applications. They add complexity, intercoolers, wastegates, blow-off valves, additional plumbing that can leak or fail. And the promised fuel economy often evaporates when driven enthusiastically, because turbo engines encourage heavy throttle use to access the boost. More critically, turbochargers operate in extreme conditions, exhaust gases spinning a turbine at over 100,000 RPM, temperatures exceeding 800 degrees Celsius, oil-cooled bearings that cook if you don't let the engine idle after hard driving. The failure modes are expensive. Mazda refused to follow the crowd. Their SkyActiv G naturally aspirated engines power the MX-5, CX-30, and Mazda 3 with impressive efficiency and bulletproof reliability. The 2-liter SkyActiv G produces 186 horsepower without forced induction, delivers genuine 6.5 liters per 100 kilometers in real-world driving, and has an impeccable reliability record. Toyota kept naturally aspirated options across their hybrid lineup. The Corolla Hybrid uses a 1.8-liter NA engine that Consumer Report rates at just 3 problems per 100 vehicles, compared to 67 for the turbocharged Mercedes C-Class. Honda maintained naturally aspirated engines in the Jazz and in certain Civic markets. These engines don't make headlines, but they also don't make warranty claims. The tide hasn't fully turned. Most European manufacturers remain committed to turbocharging for emissions compliance, but the continued success of Mazda, Toyota, and Honda proves there's a market for simplicity. And as turbo reliability issues mount, expect more manufacturers to reconsider. Number 6. The manual handbrake. Electronic parking brakes were marketed as a convenience feature. One button press instead of pulling a lever. auto hold at traffic lights, automatic engagement when you switch off the engine. What they didn't advertise, the electronic parking brake that fails leaves you with no parking brake. The manual handbrake that fails can be fixed with a cable adjustment. One is a total system failure requiring dealer intervention. The other is a 15-minute repair. They also didn't mention that the electronic parking brakes disable the ability to perform a handbrake turn. Not that you would, obviously, but more importantly, they eliminate the manual override that lets you modulate braking in an emergency. If your main brakes fail, a traditional handbrake gives you a mechanical backup. An electronic system gives you a button that may or may not respond. The statistics are grim. Only about 8% of new cars sold in Europe still offer a manual handbrake. The feature has been systematically eliminated from mainstream vehicles, but Dacia refuses to comply. The Sandero and Jogger retain manual handbrakes. The new Duster has moved to electronic on higher trims. A disappointing concession, but Dacia's core philosophy still prioritizes simplicity and repairability over technology for its own sake. And their sales figures. The Sandero was Europe's best-selling car in 2023. Prove customers respond to this approach. Some performance cars have also retained manual handbrakes for driver engagement. The Toyota GR86 and Subaru BRZ kept the lever. The Mazda MX-5 wouldn't dream of removing it. This is a feature we're still fighting to preserve rather than restore. But every Dacia sold, every MX-5 purchased, every GR86 on the road sends a message that drivers value mechanical simplicity over electronic convenience. Number 5. Hydraulic power steering. Electric power steering took over because it improves fuel economy. No hydraulic pump means no parasitic drag on the engine. The savings are real, perhaps 2 to 3% in efficiency. The trade-off is feel. Hydraulic steering provides linear progressive feedback that communicates exactly what the front tires are doing. Electric steering filters that information through sensors, software, and motors. The best electric systems approach hydraulic feel. Most don't even come close. Porsche faced a customer revolt when early electric steering systems felt numb and artificial. They've invested heavily in improving feedback, and the current 911 is genuinely excellent, but it took years of development and customer complaints to reach that point. The good news? Electric steering has improved dramatically. The bad news? Hydraulic steering is essentially extinct in new vehicles. This isn't a feature coming back, it's a feature we've lost, with manufacturers working to replicate what they've discarded rather than simply keeping it. Mazda's approach deserves credit. Their electric steering system prioritizes feedback over pure efficiency, and the MX-5 steering feel rivals hydraulic systems from the past. If you're shopping for a new car and steering feel matters, test a Mazda back-to-back against competitors. The difference is immediately apparent. Number 4. Features that used to be standard, now returning as standard. This one is about the slow reversal of the options list epidemic. For years, manufacturers stripped equipment from base models to advertise lower starting prices, then loaded the options list with items that were previously included. Metallic paint, floor mats, spare wheel, reversing camera, features that cost almost nothing to include became €500 line items. Regulation is forcing some reversals. Reversing cameras became mandatory in the EU from 2024 for new type approvals. Automatic emergency braking is required. Speed limiters are mandated. Manufacturers can no longer charge extra for safety equipment that's legally required. But the real shift is competitive pressure from value brands. Dacia includes air conditioning, electric windows, and a multimedia system as standard on even the base Sandero. MG undercuts European rivals while offering equipment levels that would cost thousands in options elsewhere. When a €15,000 Dacia becomes better equipped than a €30,000 Volkswagen with no options ticked, customers notice. And manufacturers are slowly responding by improving standard specification. The Skoda Octavia, long positioned as the sensible choice, now includes feature standard that competitors charge for. The Hyundai range offers strong standard equipment across all trim levels. Even premium brands are adjusting, recognizing that nickel and diming customers for floor mats damages brand perception. Number 3. Front fog lights. This one is controversial because the argument for removal wasn't entirely strong. Modern LED headlights provide excellent low light visibility. Adaptive lighting systems adjust beam patterns automatically. In many conditions, traditional fog lights are genuinely redundant, but fog lights serve a specific purpose that headlights cannot replicate, illuminating the road surface immediately in front of the vehicle during thick fog, heavy rain, or snow. The wide, low beam pattern cuts under the fog rather than reflecting back into the driver's eyes. Several manufacturers deleted fog lights entirely, replacing them with decorative trim pieces or parking sensors in the bumper location where fog lights traditionally lived. The styling looked cleaner, the accountants saved money, and drivers in Scotland, Norway, or the Alps discovered their brand new cars couldn't cope with actual weather. The return is partial. Some manufacturers are restoring fog lights as optional equipment. Others are integrating fog light functions into their LED matrix systems, though these rarely match the effectiveness of dedicated fog lamps. If you live somewhere with actual weather, check the options list carefully before buying. The feature that was standard on a €12,000 car in 2005 might cost you €400 extra in 2026 if it's available. Number 2. Manual gearboxes. The manual transmission isn't coming back in any meaningful way for mainstream cars. That battle is lost. But it's holding on in specific segments where driver engagement matters. Porsche continues offering manual transmissions in the 911 and 718 ranges. The take rate is low, perhaps 10 to 15%, but Porsche recognizes that enthusiast buyers value the option. BMW kept the manual in the M2 after customer outcry, though it's disappeared from the M3 and M4 in most markets. The Mazda MX-5 remains proudly manual first, with the automatic as the alternative rather than the default. Toyota engineered a manual transmission specifically for the GR Corolla and GR Yaris, recognizing that hot hatch buyers want 3 pedals. In the mainstream market, the picture is bleaker. The Ford Focus ST went automatic only. The Volkswagen Golf GTI is automatic in most configurations. Manual take rates have fallen below 5% in many segments, making the business case for offering them increasingly difficult. But here's the important point. Manuals still exist. Manufacturers haven't completely abandoned them. If you want a manual gearbox in 2026, you can find one. You just need to look at specific models rather than expecting every car to offer the choice. Buy the manuals while they last. Every purchase is a vote for keeping them available. Number 1. The freedom to check, maintain, and understand your own vehicle. This is a meta feature that encompasses everything else, and it's the one where the tide is finally, genuinely turning. For 20 years, manufacturers pushed towards sealed systems, dealer-only diagnostics, software-locked components, and subscription services. They wanted you dependent. They wanted every interaction to flow through their profit centers. The backlash has been comprehensive. Right-to-repair legislation is advancing across Europe. The EU is mandating longer parts availability and better access to diagnostic equipment. Euro NCAP's physical button requirements acknowledge the car should be operable without a computer science degree. Most importantly, the market is speaking. Dacia's success proves customers want simple, maintainable vehicles. The continued demand for older vehicles, the average age of vehicles on European roads is now 12.1 years, shows that people are keeping their existing cars rather than upgrading to more complex replacements. Manufacturers are noticing. The features we've discussed today aren't returning because executives had moral revelations. They're returning because the alternatives failed, because run-flat tires annoyed customers, because touchscreen controls caused crashes, because sealed systems generated warranty claims and reputation damage. Your role in this is simple. Keep demanding better. Keep buying the cars that respect your intelligence. Keep avoiding the vehicles that treat you like a passive subscriber rather than an owner. The rebellion is working. Let's make sure it finishes the job. These 11 features represent the first wave of sanity returning to automotive design. Physical buttons mandated by safety regulations, spare wheels returning as standard equipment, climate controls you can operate without a tutorial. But this isn't complete victory. Most cars still ship without dipsticks. Manual handbrakes remain endangered. Manual transmissions are in survival mode, not thriving. The manufacturers retreated on the easy stuff, the features where customer complaints were loudest and the fixes were cheapest. The harder battle continues. Which removed feature would you most want restored? Which manufacturer's reversal surprised you the most? Share your thoughts below, because this conversation shapes what manufacturers do next. Every comment, every video share, every purchasing decision sends a signal. The industry is listening now. Let's make sure they hear us clearly.